Hello everyone and welcome to Vidyarthi Pro. Today we will be discussing about chapter 8 of class 12, which is human health and diseases, and we will be discussing first the important points of the chapter and then some important questions from the chapter which are very important from your board's aspect. So first topic from the chapter is how do we define health as? So when we talk about health, it is defined as the state of complete physical, mental and social well-being. So अगर डेफिनेशन आती है हेल्थ की तो हमको ये तीनों पॉइंट्स उसमें इंक्लूड करने हैं. सो फर्स्ट इज फिजिकल वेलबींग, सेकंड इज आवर मेंटल वेलबींग एंड द थर्ड वन इज आवर social well-being. Okay, so health is defined as a complete physical, mental and social well-being of the person or an individual. So ये तीनों points हम इस definition में लिख कर आएंगे. ये तीनों aspects हमको इस definition में cover करना है. नेक्स्ट इज इट इज ऑल्सो इंक्रीजिंग द लॉन्गिविटी ऑफ द पर्सन. सो कितना लाइफ स्पैन है लोगों का, वो भी अगर इंसान हेल्दी है तो वो ज़्यादा देर तक जीता है, और अगर वो हेल्दी नहीं है, अगर वो डिजीज्ड है, सो द लाइफ स्पैन ऑल्सो डिक्रीजेस. ओके, देन health also reduces the infant and the maternal mortality rate. So these are some of the features which are mentioned in the NCERT. Now next is what is a disease. So how do we define disease as? Next question. This is also an important question. How do we define disease as? Any condition which interferes with the normal functioning of the body. कोई भी ऐसी condition हमारी body में होती है जिससे कि जो normal functioning है body की वो affect होती है, वो hamper होती है, so उसको हम बोलते हैं disease. Okay, so this is causing a disorder in our body or in our mind. किसी का भी, चाहे फिजिकली हमको हार्म हो या फिर हमारी मेंटल हेल्थ जो है वो अगर इफेक्टेड होती है, सो दैट इज अ डिजीज्ड स्टेट. डिजीज कॉजिंग ऑर्गेनिजम्स आर कॉल्ड एज पैथोजेंस. वो ऑर्गेनिजम्स जो हमारी बॉडी में डिजीजेस कॉज करते हैं, जो हमारी बॉडी में बीमारियां कॉज करते हैं, उनको हम क्या बोलते हैं? पैथोजेंस. ओके, so this was about disease. Now next important point which is mentioned in the book is the types of disease. So what are the various types of disease? First one is infectious disease and the second type is the non-infectious disease. सबसे पहले बात करते हैं what are infectious disease. Infectious disease are the ones which are being transmitted from one infected person to another. person से किसी normal healthy इंसान में transmit कर जाए या फैल जाए, उसको हम बोलते हैं इन्फेक्शियस डिजीज. ओके, इन्फेक्शियस डिजीज अकर ड्यू टू दी पैथोजेंस. इसके लिए बहुत सारे पैथोजेंस रिस्पॉन्सिबल हो सकते हैं. फॉर एग्जाम्पल वी कैन हैव बैक्टीरियल डिजीजेस, वायरल डिजीजेस, फंगल डिजीजेस. सो देर आर सो मेनी कैटेगरीज जो हम अभी आने वाले चैप्टर में देखेंगे, इंपॉर्टेंट कैटेगरीज. तो ये जो इन्फेक्शियस डिजीजेस हैं ये पैथोजेंस की वजह से होती हैं. नेक्स्ट इज इट इज मेंटेनिंग पर्सनल हाइजीन एंड पब्लिक हेल्थ reduces the probability of the disease. अगर हम proper personal and public health measures लेते हैं, so ऐसी diseases हमारी body में होने की chances कम होते हैं. Examples of such diseases can be tetanus and hepatitis B, and there are many more examples जो कि हम आने वाले chapter में we're going to look at all those examples. Okay, so this was the first type of diseases which was infectious disease. Now next is the non-infectious disease. Non-infectious disease are the ones which are not transmitted from one person to another. एक इंसान से दूसरे इंसान में वो फैल नहीं पाती है या ट्रांसमिट नहीं होती है. And extrinsic as well as intrinsic factors like deficiencies हो गए या heredity हो गए, they are the factors which cause the disease. So ये किसी pathogen specific diseases नहीं है और ना ही किसी एक इंसान से दूसरे इंसान में diseases जो हैं वो फैलती हैं, बल्कि कोई भी विटामिन की डेफिशिएंसी हो गई बॉडी में या फिर कुछ हेरिडिटी डिजीजेस हो गई जो ट्रांसमिट करती है अपने एक जनरेशन से दूसरे जनरेशन के अंदर, वो डिजीजेस हम कहते हैं कि दे आर द नॉन इन्फेक्शियस डिजीजेस. ऐसे डिजीजेस में पब्लिक हेल्थ एंड पर्सनल हाइजीन मेजर्स टेकन केयर होने के बाद भी अगर हम ध्यान भी रखें पब्लिक और पर्सनल हाइजीन मेजर्स का, तब भी वो इतना इफेक्टिव नहीं होता है. फॉर एग्जांपल कैंसर. ओके, सो कैंसर इज अ डिजीज विच इज not associated with any kind of a pathogen, and even if you're taking the utmost care to maintain the public and personal hygiene care, so such like diseases are not affected by that. So ऐसे diseases जो non infectious होती है, जो transmit नहीं होती एक इंसान से दूसरे इंसान में, infected इंसान से एक normal healthy individual में, so these are the ones which you call as the non infectious diseases. I hope this is clear till now. Now we are starting with the first category of diseases, which is called as the bacterial diseases. So this is our first disease category, bacterial diseases. Now we will talk about the disease typhoid, which is caused by the bacteria Salmonella typhi. Okay, so Salmonella typhi is the bacterium which is a pathogenic bacterium, of course, and which causes the disease typhoid in human beings. And how does it spread? Now, this is spread by the contaminated food and water. So, if we are intaking any food or any water which is already contaminated with the spores of this bacteria Salmonella typhi, so it is a possibility कि हमको वो बीमारी हो सकती है. So how do we confirm the disease? It is by the Vidal test. Okay, so Vidal test is the confirmatory test which confirms that the patient is suffering from typhoid. Now, what are the symptoms of the disease? Now, what are the symptoms of the disease? Let us talk about that. Symptoms, when we say constant high fever, this is the first and foremost. Then weakness is experienced by the patient, stomach pain, constipation, loss of appetite, headache, intestinal perforations, and if there are severe cases, if the patient is having severe infection, that it may even lead to the death of the patient. Okay, so you should remember what are the symptoms of the diseases, and also what is the mode of transmission of the disease, and what is the causative organism. So how will the question come? आपसे कुछ भी कोई भी आपसे पैथोजन पूछा जाएगा कि उस डिजीज का पैथोजन कौन सा है जो उसका डिजीज कॉज करता है. सेकेंडली, व्हाट इज द मोड ऑफ ट्रांसमिशन ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर डिजीज, एंड लास्टली यू कैन मेंशन अबाउट द सिम्टम्स ऑफ द डिजीज ऑल्सो. सो इस डिजीजेस की वजह से, ये पर्टिकुलर बीमारी की वजह से पेशेंट कौन से सिम्टम्स एक्सपीरियंस करता है, क्या चीज़ ऐसी एक्सपीरियंस करता है कि वो डॉक्टर के पास जाएगा तो वो बोलेगा दैट दिस इज समथिंग विच इज़ नॉट proper, which is not happening normal in my body. So these are the symptoms of the disease. Okay, now next is what are the preventive measures. क्या preventive measures लेकर हम टाइफॉइड को रोक सकते हैं? प्रॉपर कम्युनिटी सैनिटेशन, आसपास हमको ध्यान रखना है कि दैट द सैनिटेशन कंडीशंस आर गुड, पर्सनल क्लेanliness, hygiene का maintenance रखना, and also typhoid vaccines are available these days, so these can be given and this would obviously lessen the severity of the disease. तो कम severe disease होगी हमारी बॉडी में अगर हम वैक्सीनेटेड हैं उस डिजीज के अगेंस्ट, तो उसके सिम्टम्स बहुत कम होते हैं, सिवियरिटी नहीं होती सिम्टम्स में इतने ज़्यादा. Okay, now next, this important point is mentioned in NCERT about Mary Mellon. Now, who was Mary Mellon? She was nicknamed as टाइफॉइड मैरी. ओके, सो उनको निकनेम दिया गया था टाइफॉइड मैरी का. शी हाउएवर वाज अ कुक बाय प्रोफेशन एंड शी वाज आल्सो अ टाइफॉइड कैरियर, एंड she was a typhoid carrier and she was cooking food for normal people, and therefore she continued to spread typhoid for several years through the food that she was preparing, and she was not ready to accept this fact that she is spreading the disease to so many people, so therefore she was nicknamed as typhoid Mary. All right, so this one important fact that you can remember, which is mentioned in the book and sometimes this also comes as a short question in your exams. Next disease that you have to remember now is pneumonia. Now, what is pneumonia caused by? It is caused by Streptococcus pneumoniae, bacterial disease again, and Haemophilus influenzae. So these two bacteria cause pneumonia in human beings. And what what is it affecting? This is, these aerosols are being inhaled and they are going to be entering inside the body, and what are they going to infect? They are going to infect the alveoli of the lungs. So alveoli of the lungs are going to be infected by the pneumonia, which is basically caused by this bacteria, Streptococcus pneumoniae. Now alveoli, how is it getting affected? Alveoli is getting filled by the fluid, which is going to decrease the respiratory efficiency of the lungs. Fine. So these lungs are going to be further filled by the fluid. These are the lungs and these are going to be filled by the fluid, and that finally is going to decrease the respiratory efficiency of the lungs, and this is how the disease is harmful for human beings. How does it spread? It is spreaded by inhaling droplets or aerosols from the infected person. जो already इंसान निमोनिया की बीमारी है जिसको, अगर वो खांसता है, छींकता है, सो उससे जो ड्रॉपलेट्स निकले या एरोसोल्स जो आ गए हवा में, अगर वो कोई इंसान, नॉर्मल इंसान उसको इनहेल करेगा, so that person is also going to be infected with pneumonia. Okay, so this is how this spreads. Now let us see what are the symptoms of the disease. So symptoms, when we talk about fever, chills, cough, headache, and in severe cases the lips and fingers also turn bluish and grayish in color. So these are the symptoms which normal person who is suffering from pneumonia is going to experience. Okay, so this is what you're going to remember, the same which is given in your textbook. Now we are coming to the next type of disease, which are viral diseases, the second category of disease. Now these are the viral diseases, and let us see what viral diseases are common in human beings. When we talk about viral diseases, the first kind of a disease that we're going to study is common cold. Okay, so common cold is caused by the group of viruses which are called as the rhinoviruses. Rhinoviruses are the group of viruses which causes common cold in human beings, and they are infecting the nasal epithelium and respiratory passage, but not the lungs. Okay, so they will be entering and they will be just infecting our upper respiratory tract. They are not penetrating deep inside the lungs in normal cases. So therefore it is written they are infecting nasal epithelium and respiratory passages. So respiratory passage मतलब starting का जो passage है respiratory का, upper respiratory passage before it enters the lungs, वो सारा area जो होगा इसमें affected रहेगा up till the upper part of the respiratory tract. Attack lasts for 3 to 7 days. So जब भी कभी कोई इंसान को common cold होता है, so the symptoms are going to persist for 3 to 7 days. So this is the normal time frame which is taken by these viral diseases to subside. Okay, spreads by contaminated objects, droplets from the infected person. Again, if somebody is infected and if a normal person inhales the droplets which are given out, which are sneezed out, or which are coughed out from the infected person, then the normal person has the high chances that they can also be infected with the same virus. Okay, this is how it spreads. Now what are the symptoms of the disease? When we talk about symptoms, nasal congestion, because it is affecting the upper respiratory tract, so nasal congestion is the first symptom that the patient will be experiencing, along with the discharge from the nose. Then sore throat, then hoarseness of the voice, आवाज का भारीपन, गले में खराश होना is what you call as sore throat. Then cough is खांसी होना, headache होना, tiredness. These are the symptoms which the patient experiences when he or she suffers from the disease common cold. Next viral disease that we're going to talk about is dengue. Now let us see what dengue is. Dengue is caused by the virus flavivirus. Flavivirus causes dengue, but it is transmitted by the bite of mosquito which is infected by the virus. So when a mosquito which is already infected by this virus bites a normal healthy person, then this is how the normal person is going to be infected by this disease which is called as dengue. Okay, so transmitted by the bite of the mosquito, which is who is already infected by the virus. It affects or infects the infants, young children and adults. So किसी को भी अगर वो मच्छर काटता है which is carrying this virus, then that person is going to be infected with this dengue fever. How does the symptoms appear? It is again appearing for 3 to 14 days after the infective bite. After the mosquito bites you, 3 से 14 दिन तक ये symptoms इसके रहेंगे. और symptoms क्या होते हैं? High fever, severe headache, pain behind the eyes, muscle and joint pain and rashes. So these are the symptoms which are caused by the dengue, and this is what patient experiences once he or she has the dengue fever. And now you will be talking about the next one, which is chikungunya. How is chikungunya caused? It is caused by the alpha virus, which is called as chikungunya virus also. Okay? So remember we have done about one virus in dengue, which was flavivirus, and here we have the alpha virus which is causing chikungunya. Now this is also spread by the mosquito bite, and which mosquito is causing chikungunya bite, which is Aedes aegypti mosquito. Okay, so this you have to remember. Aedes aegypti mosquito bite causes chikungunya. How can we prevent it? Overall mosquito control and avoidance of mosquito bite. अगर हम mosquitoes आसपास penetrate ना होने दें और उनकी bite से अपने आप को बचा लें, so this is how we'll be able to, cause the prevention of this particular disease. No specific treatment medicine, however, is present to reduce the symptoms, but then symptomatic relief medications can be given to the patient. And what are the symptoms? Again, high fever, severe joint pain, muscle pain, headache, नॉइजिया का मतलब जैसे वॉमिटिंग सी फीलिंग होती है कि जैसे विल वॉमिट, सच लाइक फीलिंग इज कॉल्ड एज नॉइजिया. देन फटीग थकान होना और बॉडी में रैशेस. ठीक है, सो ये सभी सिम्टम्स रहते हैं चिकनगुनिया के पेशेंट में. Now, next category of disease, the third category of disease is now the protozoan diseases. Now we have talked about the bacterial diseases, we have talked about the viral diseases. Next is the protozoan diseases. Protozoan diseases में सबसे पहले we have to talk about malaria, which is caused by the protozoan Plasmodium. Okay, now Plasmodium में Plasmodium vivax or Plasmodium malariae or Plasmodium falciparum. So we have these three Plasmodiums which can cause malaria in human beings. So malaria is caused by the protozoan, which is Plasmodium, Plasmodium vivax, Plasmodium malariae, Plasmodium falciparum. All of them causes malaria in human beings. However, Plasmodium falciparum causes the most severe and fatal malignant malaria. सबसे ज़्यादा जो severe और जानलेवा, fatal मतलब which is life threatening. Okay, so वो malaria होता है, वो malignant malaria is caused by, this is caused by Plasmodium falciparum. Okay, so this is clear. Now, how does this protozoan disease, what is the vector? The vector of the Plasmodium is female Anopheles mosquito. Okay, now the disease is caused by protozoan Plasmodium, but then who carries this Plasmodium? It is the female Anopheles mosquito which transfers the sporozoites into the human being. So once they bite the human beings, the beings are going to be infected by this disease. Okay, and what is the treatment? Anti-malarial drugs are available. If somebody is suffering from malaria, then anti-malarial drugs are available, which includes quinine and chloroquine, and these can be given to the patient, which are of course going to lessen the severity of the symptoms and going to give relief to the patient. What are Next is how do we prevent malaria? So by killing the mosquitoes, by spraying DDT, by spraying BHC and using insect repellents and mosquito nets. So life cycle of Plasmodium, the next topic. Plasmodium requires two hosts, and what are the hosts? Human beings and mosquitoes. So the entire life cycle of Plasmodium gets completed once it enters both the hosts. So half of it is getting completed in human beings and then the rest of them is in completing in mosquito. Now let us talk about how this life cycle of Plasmodium goes in the next slide. Now let us see the life cycle of Plasmodium in detail, and this is a very important question also. So it is coming in the long question as well as the short question, so you should understand the complete life cycle in detail. Fine. So we'll start with the first point over here. When the mosquito is biting the another human being, so what is it doing? It is injecting the sporozoites into the human being. So this is how the mosquito bites the skin, and in the way when it bites the skin, it is injecting the sporozoites into the skin. All right, now these sporozoites are inside the body, are now basically taken to the liver through the blood. So this is how it is going to be moving, and this is reaching the liver through the blood. Now this parasite, this is reproducing asexually in the liver cells, and then they are bursting the previous cell and they are occupying, or they are entering into the new bloodstream. Okay, now this parasite reproduces asexually in the liver cells, and they are bursting the cell and then they are being released into the blood. So cell को burst करके वो blood में छोड़ दिए जाते हैं. So उसके बाद basically ये parasites जो हैं यहाँ पर आगे asexual reproduction होता है इनका, red blood cells में continued रहेगा. Red blood cells में भी ये burst करेंगे, they will be bursting in the red blood cells also. And herein the symptoms such as fever, starts to appear in the patient. So they are releasing a substance called as hemozoin. So when this hemozoin is released, then the symptoms starts to appear in the patient, and this parasite now infects the new red blood cells. Okay, so this is how the cycle goes further. Now, once it is done, herein comes the sexual stage, which is in the form of gametocytes, which develop in the red blood cells. So these gametocytes are developing in the red blood cells. Now, once the gametocytes are present in the red blood cells, if the mosquito comes again and it is biting the human blood, so these gametocytes are again entering into the mosquito. Okay, so this is how it enters again back into this female Anopheles mosquito. It is taken up by the mosquito as the male or in the form of the blood. Okay, and now the next phase, fertilization of these gametocytes will be happening inside the mosquito's intestine. So this fertilization happens here now between these gametocytes inside the intestine of the mosquito. Okay, so this continues further. Now this is done. After that, again the sporozoites are formed, and these sporozoites are brought up to the salivary glands of the mosquito. So once it again bites the normal human being, these sporozoites are going to enter again into the bloodstream of the human being, and the cycle is going to continue. So here we have seen that human host and mosquito both are required. So we have the human host, this part is continued in the human host, and this is continued in the mosquito. Okay, so these two both are required, and therefore we say the life cycle of Plasmodium would be requiring two hosts. All right, so I hope this is clear. Now in the next slide we will be talking about the life cycle. If the question comes, how will you write it? How will you write various points regarding the life cycle? So the first would be Plasmodium require two hosts. One is human being and the second is mosquito, and that too the female Anopheles mosquito. The life cycle of Plasmodium starts with injecting sporozoites through the bite of the infected female Anopheles mosquito. So once the infected female Anopheles mosquito bites a human being, a normal healthy person, so these sporozoites are going to be entering inside the body of that person, and through the bloodstream it reaches the liver cells. Okay, so parasites multiply in the liver cells, and therefore they, once they multiply in the liver cells, now they move out of those cells, they burst them, and then they attack the red blood cells, RBCs, where they will be again using and then rupturing the RBCs. Now there is a release of a toxic substance which is called as hemozoin. Now this toxic substance is important because hemozoin, when this is released from the ruptured RBCs, this is when the patient or the person who's suffering from malaria will show the symptoms such as chill and high fever. So shivering will happen, high fever will be experienced by the patient, and so such like symptoms appear when hemozoin is released, okay, by these ruptured RBCs in the patient blood. From the infected human, now these parasites enter again back into the female Anopheles mosquito. During biting and sucking blood, these gametocytes enter inside the body of the Anopheles mosquito, and fertilization further happens in the intestine of the mosquito. Okay, therefore we have seen that two hosts are required, Anopheles mosquito and human beings, for the Plasmodium to complete its life cycle. Okay, so this is an important question. I hope you have understood this. Now moving on, next is amoebiasis or amoebic dysentery. So again, amoebic dysentery, it is a protozoan disease caused by Entamoeba histolytica. Transmission of this parasite occurs from the feces of the infected person to the food or the food products through the houseflies. So houseflies are the carriers basically for this Entamoeba histolytica, and then when they sit on the food that we eat, they would be transferring this parasite, or they would be transmitting this parasite onto the food or the water, which can be contaminated with this particular protozoan. All right, the symptoms would be constipation, abdominal pain, cramps, stools with excess mucus and blood clots. So this is how the patient experiences abdominal pain, constipation, there would be cramps, and then the stools can also have mucus and blood clots present in them. So these are the symptoms of a person or patient suffering from amoebic dysentery. Next is Escheriasis. When we talk about Escheriasis, now the causative organism for Escheriasis is Ascaris lumbricoides. Commonly, it is called as roundworm, and it is infection is occurring in human beings again by the consumption of contaminated water, vegetables or fruits. When we're eating them raw, they can be contaminated with this parasite, Ascaris lumbricoides. And what are the symptoms for this particular disease? Internal bleeding of intestine, muscular pain, and fever. All right, anemia, nausea, headache, abdominal pain again, indigestion, and blockage of intestinal passages. So this is happening in the fatal cases. So these are the symptoms of Escheriasis caused by roundworm or Ascaris lumbricoides. Next is Elephantiasis or Filariasis. Now when we talk about this, again the causative organism, you will have to remember each one of them, both the biological nomenclature, binomial nomenclature, and the common name you have to remember. So these are filarial worms, and the binomial nomenclature is Wucheria bancrofti or Wucheria malai. And what is the vector of this disease? Female Anopheles culex mosquito. Okay, and the symptoms would be chronic inflammation of the organs in which they are living. So they would be causing the inflammation and swelling of those organs. Then they would be blocking of lymphatic vesicles, which results in appearance of elephant-like legs. So there is a huge swelling in the legs, and this is how the legs look like elephant's legs, and so the name is elephantiasis. Fine, even the deformation of genital organs occur in this disease. So these are the symptoms of the disease. Next, we are coming to a disease which is caused by the fungus. Now this is ringworm, the causative organism. This is a fungus disease caused by the fungus, and which is the fungus Microsporum or Trichophyton and Epidermophyton. These are the causative organisms for ringworm. And how are the infections acquired in human beings? They are acquired from the soil. When we are walking, such fungus can infect our skin, or using the towels and the articles which are used by a person who is already infected with this disease. So towel, cloths of infected individual can cause this disease in the normal healthy individual as well. Heat and moisture enhances the growth of the organism. So when the optimum condition is given to that particular organism, so this would be enhancing the growth of the organism. Target organ is skin, nails, folds of the skin in groin and toes region. So this is where the organism grows fast. And what are the symptoms? Appearance of dry scaly lesions in the skin, nails, and scalp, and also lesions are accompanied by the intense itching. All right, so these are the symptoms of the ringworm. Now next is how is prevention and control of these diseases is done. So how can we prevent such like diseases, and how can we control these diseases? So first of all, let us talk about the infectious diseases. This can be prevented by maintaining good personal and public hygiene conditions. So personal hygiene will be keeping the body clean, consumption of clean drinking food and water, vegetables and fruits, whatever we are eating, that should be washed properly before eating. So this would be leading to, disease. We can lessen the chances of diseases in our body. So proper public hygiene, which includes proper disposal of waste and excreta. Waste and excreta should be disposed of periodically, and public hygiene measures should be taken care of. Also, there should be cleaning and disinfection of the water reservoirs, pools, and tanks into which these materials sometimes are dumped. So also eradication of vectors and the breeding places of the mosquitoes. There should be no breeding places, और अगर हमारे आसपास mosquitoes की breeding places नहीं होंगे, so then of course there would be less prevalence, and वो इतने ज़्यादा quantity में नहीं होंगे हमारे आसपास. So therefore, eradication of vectors and breeding places of the mosquitoes. Also at homes, we can use mosquito repellents and mosquito nets. Vaccination and immunization programs for the diseases like polio, for diphtheria, tetanus, all these diseases should be, people should be vaccinated for these diseases so that the severity of the disease is lessened in these populations. Next is use of antibiotics and drugs to treat the infected person. Proper treatment should be given to the patient, and wherever necessary, the antibiotics and the needed drugs should be taken and should be given to the patient as per the requirements under medical supervision. Fine. So these are the methods of prevention and control of the diseases that we have discussed in the chapter so far. All right, next now we will be talking about the important questions from the topics that we have read till now. So let us discuss about some of the important questions. We'll start with the short questions. So 2 marks questions first. We will discuss about how we can write the answer for these questions. So list the symptoms of Ascariasis and how does the healthy person acquire this infection. So here in the question we have been asked two things. So first of all, we will have to write the symptoms of disease Ascariasis, and secondly, how does this disease is transmitted. Okay, so the mode of transmission of the disease is what we are going to write in the answer. So to the point question is asked. So for Ascariasis, the patient suffers from abdominal pain. The patient is suffering from indigestion, internal bleeding. So such like symptoms we would be mentioning in the disease, and how does this disease is transmitted or acquired by the healthy person. So when there is, so this is taken by the contaminated food and water that the patient can intake, and this is how the patient acquires this infection. Okay, so we will be mentioning this answer in 2 points. Now next question is, what is the causative organism of the disease amoebiasis, and list 3 symptoms. So when we talk about the disease amoebiasis, Entamoeba histolytica is the organism which causes it. And what are the symptoms? Constipation, abdominal pain, cramps. We can mention all these symptoms as an answer for this question. Okay, so similarly, you can get for other diseases as well. We have discussed about bacterial diseases. We have also discussed about viral diseases, even the fungal diseases. So similarly, like it is asked here, causative organism can be asked for these diseases as well, and the symptoms for them as well can be asked from you. Okay, so you will be preparing all the diseases accordingly. Now next is, for example, the other question is from malaria, protozoan diseases. Why do symptoms of malaria do not appear immediately after the entry of sporozoites into the human body when bitten by the female Anopheles mosquito? So you remember we have discussed about the substance called as hemozoin, and we discussed that this is released from the ruptured RBCs, and once this is released, then only the symptoms of malaria such as chills and such as fever is experienced by the patient. So therefore, once it is infected with the sporozoites, immediately the symptoms do not arise. It is once the hemozoin is released by the ruptured RBCs, the symptoms arise in the patient. Okay. Next question, how does hemozoin affect human body when released in the body during malarial infection? hemozoin हमारी बॉडी में कैसे इफेक्ट करता है जब वो मलेरियल इन्फेक्शन के ड्यूरिंग रिलीज होता है into the blood by the ruptured RBCs. So you can write that hemozoin is responsible for causing chills and high fever in the patient who are suffering from the disease, and this is the recurring fever which recurs itself after 3 to 4 days. So this is how the hemozoin affects the human body when it is released into the blood during the malarial infection by the ruptured RBC. So you will be mentioning these 2 symptoms here. Fine, so I hope this is clear. Now moving on to some of the long questions. I hope this is clear. Now moving on to some other questions. Write the binomial names of the casual. Now next question is, write the binomial names of the organisms which are causing the following diseases: typhoid, pneumonia, filariasis and amoebiasis. So you will be writing the binomial nomenclature. Okay, so typhoid you can write Salmonella typhi. Pneumonia, if you remember, we have talked about Streptococcus pneumoniae. So filariasis, you can write Wucheria bancrofti, and for amoebiasis, Entamoeba histolytica. So you will have to mention the binomial names or the biological names of these particular diseases which are caused by the various organisms. Okay. Fine. Now, next question, we are talking about some of the long questions. So, describe the sexual and asexual phases of life cycle of Plasmodium that causes malaria. So, the complete cycle you will have to draw, plus you will have to explain each phase, both which is happening in the mosquito and the human. Okay, so both the faces plus the diagram that you will have to draw and explain it nicely here, because this is a long question. Okay, so this question, practice the diagram which is given in the NCERT, and we have also discussed that, plus write down the important points which we have mentioned after the diagram. All right. So diagram should also be self-explanatory as it is mentioned in your book, in your textbook NCERT. Plus you can write some points again, describing the entire life cycle of the mosquito. Next question. Write the ways that you will suggest to your school principal so as to promote awareness amongst the youth against the spread of mosquito-borne diseases. Fine. So here you would be writing all the important diseases that we have discussed, in which are being transmitted by the vectors which are mosquito borne. Okay, and how are we going to prevent it? So mosquito borne diseases you will be telling first, and then you would be also, we have discussed various ways of prevention and control na. So that will be mentioned here as the answer, prevention plus control of these diseases. So we can prevent the breeding, we can prevent the prevailing of breeding places of mosquitoes, then we can use the mosquito repellents and mosquito nets at home. So such like diseases and their prevention and control measures, you will have to mention each one of them in detail here as the full question, because the question talks about the awareness. Okay, so awareness amongst the youth you have to create, and this would be created once you will have to tell them the diseases that are being spread by the mosquitoes, what are the various deadly diseases, and then you will have to tell them that what preventive and control measures that they can be taken both on the personal and public level so that these diseases can be prevented. All right, so this would again be a long question. Now next is classify infectious diseases and explain in detail about the bacterial diseases. So first of all, classification, the entire classification, when we talked about the bacterial diseases, viral diseases, the fungal diseases, then helminthic, protozoan diseases, all these diseases you would be talking about, you would be mentioning with the help of the flowchart, and then you would be discussing about the bacterial disease in detail. So you will first name the bacterial diseases, then write their modes of transmission. Then after that, you will also write like which is the organism, which causative organism which causes the disease, and lastly the symptoms, and if given in the book, some of the preventive and treatment measures as well. Prevention plus treatment. So this is how we are going to answer this question in two. Okay, so this is how you would be answering this question for the infectious disease. Next is, how can we prevent and control the spread of infectious disease? So this is the entire question based on the paragraph that we discussed on the prevention and control of the infectious diseases. Fine. So all the points which are mentioned in the book for the prevention, for the preventing the spread of the disease, and also the control measures that can be taken so that the disease that does not spread at the public level, also that has to be mentioned here. All right, so this is again a 5-mark question. I hope this is clear to you. If you have liked the video, please subscribe the channel, and we will continue the second half of the chapter in the next video. Okay, so please subscribe the channel and also write the answers to all the questions that we have discussed. In case you face any problem, please write in the comment box and we would love to answer that. In case you are not sure with any of the answers, you can also ask us by writing the comment below. So have a nice day and stay tuned with us for the next video. Thank you.